Oh, wait, are we recording now? We'll just keep filming because I'll probably up quite a few times. I'll edit it after. In my job, I'm lucky enough to ride a lot of different trials bikes throughout the year, and really happy that I'll be riding the TRS for this season. Now, I have made some changes to the bike, so it's not completely standard, so I'll just run through those so you can see my setup for this year. TRS One-R 300cc. We start at the handlebars. I'm using Renthal fat bars in the titanium colour. I just think it really goes well with the bare alley frame on the TRS, so hence why I chose that. I'm using the Domino slimline grips in black. I've used these for most of last year and I've been really impressed with them actually. They're very, very similar to the Renthal grips, so they last a long time. They're not super thin grips, but they're not really fat either. They're definitely like in between, which I prefer. I have got big hands, but I just feel that if you use really fat grips, you sometimes lose the feel of the bike. So I prefer a slightly thinner grip. Yeah, like I said, I've been really happy with these. And the main reason I go for the Domino over the Renthal is I can get them in black, which I just think looks smarter than the grey colours that Renthal do. Still using some prototype BVM bar ends. These are made of nylon, really good. We're making some adjustments because we are breaking them sometimes, so we want to make sure they're super strong before they're available for people to buy. I'm using the Jitsi fat bar pad. I really like this actually because the Renthal ones, they're quite big and they can definitely rub on the cables and such sometimes. And there's one or two of the others on the market, like the S3 for example, they're relatively small and you can still end up kind of hurting yourself if you do ever have an impact. Where personally, I think this Jitsi one is like a perfect size. It's still got a lot of padding, but it's quite neat and small and it covers all the bolts. And yeah, that should help protect me a bit. On the master cylinders, these are what comes standard, which are Brake Tech, and I use the standard Brake Tech levers. I just really like the feel of these. They're long levers rather than short. I've got fairly big hands, so I actually have my master cylinders moved closer into the centre, so I've got a bit more reach, so I prefer the longer levers. I'm using the S3 adjusters for the reach and biting points. Now they've changed these for 2021. They've got better dials on them so you can kind of move them a lot easier, and they're also longer. It's quite a nice improvement actually for this year. Yeah, they're easy to dial in and I can just adjust as I'm riding, as and when I need to. I've actually swapped over my front brake caliper to the Brake Tech mono caliper. Personally, I think that is a really good front brake setup with that. There's nothing really wrong with the Brake Tech caliper that comes on these bikes as standard, but these ones I find are that little bit more powerful, and I really kind of get a real good feeling from it. So it's something that I swapped over, and yeah, it's a really good front brake. I use my front brake a lot, probably more so than my back, to be honest. So it's quite important for me to have a decent front brake, and yeah, I'm really, really happy. It's the best front brake I've ever had. That's using Galfer disc pads and a Galfer disc, which comes standard. A Galfer disc with Galfer pads, personally, I think is the best brake you can get, especially in the UK when we're in wet, slippery conditions. You've always got a nice solid brake and you never seem to get much brake fade. So yeah, really happy with those. I'm using Jitsi carbon fibre fork guards. As you can probably see, I've only ridden this bike twice, and I've already kind of taken a chunk out of one of my stickers, so it shows it's doing the job. So it's a vulnerable spot at the bottom of your forks. It's easy to get rock strikes, so it's quite important for me to protect my lower forks. They fit really well, they just clip on. I don't need any cable ties. Carbon fibre, so they look cool. And I've just added some shop stickers and a couple of sponsors for this year. Got their decals on there, and I just think it looks really good. Now the TRS One-R normally comes with a normal press fit kill button. I've swapped mine over to a lanyard. style kill button. Personally, I think these are really good. You know, if you ever drop your bike and you end up sliding away from the bike and can't get to it, it will kill the bike immediately, rather than if you've got a press fit one, your bike could be up the hill somewhere revving its off and you're scrabbling to try and get to it. On this side of the bike, you can see I've got a RT Works clutch guard on the bike. Now this one was a prototype and I got it in the black, so it's really quite stealthy and you don't really notice that you've got it on. He's now making these and they're available to buy on his eBay page or Facebook page, which the links will be in the description below. Really nice, they fit perfectly, and he's also drilled the holes out so you can still get to your bolts to be able to remove your clutch cover without having to remove that guard. They're just stuck on with double-sided tape. I personally also used a little bit of silicone bead just around the edge to stop the mud from getting down in there as well, but it's really not needed, to be honest. It's a little bit overkill. I've also got these carbon fibre frame protectors. They just offer a little bit more protection on the lower frame where it's quite vulnerable for rock strikes, so it's just going to keep it looking nice and neat. I'm using a different bash guard as well on this bike. I'm using a CSP bash plate. They're slightly wider, so they offer a bit more protection, and this one also has the option of having claws on the bottom so the bike can grip onto logs and such if you hit the bash. They are a little bit heavier than the standard bash plates, but personally I quite like it because it offers that little bit more protection, and I do quite like having those claws on the bottom to be able to grip onto logs and such if I ever sump out. Footrests, I'm using the S3 Curve. I used these for most of last year and I've gone back to them on this new bike. Personally, I feel that the tilt on the Curve is further forward than most. It's only these and the Jitsi ratio footrests that are available in that steeper angle. Personally, I think it really helps the bike grip more in wet, muddy conditions. I've gone for the S3 Curve over the Jitsi ratio because they're in aluminium and they come with the grub screws, which personally I think the grub screws are slightly grippier, especially when it gets really wet and slippery and all the mud gets bunged in the footrests. And aluminium, they're a bit lighter. Try and keep my bike as light as possible where I can. I've swapped the rear disc out to a Galfer FIM approved rear disc. It's just a stronger disc, to be honest, so less likely to bend if I ever tweak it or hit it, and it offers great braking power when using Galfer brake pads, which, like I said, this bike comes standard with Galfer brake pads. One thing we have done is we've moved the light switch and the mapping switch down from the headlight to the side of the frame here. The only reason we've really done that is because we wanted to make the wiring a little bit tidier, try and make it look a little bit more simple rather than having the big cluster of cables and such going to the headlight. It is a competition trials bike, so we don't really need a headlight. I've left mine on because they look cool. The engine is standard on this bike. Now the TRS One-R comes with 2 base gaskets in it, so it makes it slightly softer, which I think is actually better for most people in the UK. Makes it a little bit softer, smoother power delivery, which is what I quite like. I've got another RT Works guard, again, this was a prototype. This one's like a half cover, and I've actually trimmed it down a little bit more because I feel like you're only really going to strike this clutch cover around this area. Looks smart, fits perfectly, and again he's drilled out the holes so you can get to the bolts and remove that cover without having to remove the guard, which is a nice touch. Got a extended key and float bowl. Don't really need it, but it looks cool when we sell them, so I'm going to have one of them. I've put a inline fuel filter on the fuel pipe. It's just that little bit safer to have a fuel filter just in case any muck happens to get into the tank. I've got the Jitsi fuel hoses for the carburettor. They don't really come with them on this bike, so it's just that little bit neater, so if there is any overspill of petrol it will drain down onto the bash plate rather than on my crankcases. I've got an S3 idle adjuster. I don't use the S3 air screw adjuster because personally I think that they never fit quite as well as the genuine adjusters, and it's quite easily to get a bit of water and such behind your air screw, which can cause problems with the carburation not running properly. So I just use the idle screw. And I have got one of these new seals from Jitsi that cover the throttle cable into the top of the housing of the key and carb. That just prevents any water from running down into the carburetor body, which can cause issues with the carburation. Just a nice little touch. I'm using standard gearing. I've only ridden this bike twice, but personally I think the manufacturers know how to set a bike up, so I tend to keep to standard gearing, as I feel like they probably know better than I do. I'm using a Jitsi solid rear sprocket, so I think it's just safer, and yeah, I would never run without a solid rear sprocket after what happened to me. Standard chain, which is a Regina. I think they're real good quality chains, so yeah, no need to change that. I'm using the standard rear shock, which is a Rager, and I've not adjusted my suspension at all yet on this bike. Like I said, I've only ridden it twice, and I like to ride a bike for a good kind of 4 or 5 times before I actually make any major adjustments, because it does take a while for a bike to bed in the engine and the suspension, so there's no point playing with it too early until that's all settled in. Another little touch is I've got the Jitsi half rim decals, which are just placed in the spots where there were no stickers, just to protect the rim. Nice little touch, and a bit of advertisement for my new sponsors. BVM airbox decal, support your local shop. Comes with Michelin's as standard, Michelin X11s, so I've left them as it is. Michelin, well known for being the best all-round tyres on the market, so yeah, happy to leave them on my bike. A handmade knob adjuster for my tank, rather than a bolt, so I can undo my tank without having to use any tools. My dad made me that. I'm using the Trick Bits exhaust guard and radiator flap. It's all built into one, and that really stops all the muck from getting into my radiator, which is preventing the bike from overheating. If you're going to go and get a load of mud rammed in there, your bike's going to cook, which is not a good idea. You don't want that to happen. I've got a aftermarket CSP radiator cap, and I think that is my bike. So yeah, I'm really happy with it. I've only been able to ride it twice, but yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to riding TRS for this year, and hopefully we'll do some more videos.